show. Well, it hasn't really been weekly the past month or so since we were having holidays and things like that, New Year's, Christmas. Um, for those listeners out there, I'm Deshaun. Later, Rusty Sound will be coming in and joining me, but I just want to wish everyone a happy New Year. It's been a while. I've been out of town um, celebrating the holidays with my girlfriend Jackie and her family. I spent some time in Anchorage and Bethel and this little village called Oscarville, where I got a lot of traditional native foods. You know, I would have caribou soup. We'd have a lot of fish, things like that. So it was a good experience. Spent a lot of time with a big family, a lot of kids running around. But I'm glad to be back in Barrow and here talking with you guys here in Barrow and in the villages as well. So thanks everyone for all the listeners out there. We always hear a lot of good comments about the radio show and people learning a lot of things. So glad to be back. Glad to reach out to all the people out there. Today we'll be talking about a little something that affects basically everyone in Alaska. We'll be talking a little bit about vitamin D, the deficiency, and some facts too for those of you who aren't really sure what vitamin D is, how you can increase the levels or get some information on how it affects our bodies and things like that. We have a special guest on the line here with us today. Are you there, caller?
Hello, yep. How you doing, Dr. Sean?
Awesome. His name is Dr. Michael Hollick, if I'm saying that right.
You got it.
All right. And Dr. Michael is a professor of medicine, physiology, and bioscience, and he's the director of the General Clinical Research Unit in Boston, and the director of the Helotherapy, Light, and Skin Research Center in Boston University Medical Center. So do you think you could give us a little more background on yourself, doctor?
Sure. So I happened to be in the right place at the right time as a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin. And so I'm the person that identified the major circulating form of vitamin D in your blood that doctors now order to determine if you're vitamin D deficient, and it's known as 25-hydroxy vitamin D. Mm-hmm. For my PhD, I was the one that identified the active form of vitamin D made by your kidneys. And we now realize that patients with kidney disease and bone disease, one of the reasons is that they can't activate vitamin D, and so as a result, we chemically made it and showed that it actually worked. And so I've been spending over the past 40 years, my career has been focused on vitamin D, the importance of diet, sun exposure, and the impact that vitamin D deficiency has from birth until death in terms of causing chronic disease.
Wow, 40 years. that's a good chunk of time. And so Dr. Hollick is very knowledgeable about the subject that we'll be having today. So and like I do want to remind those listeners out there, all of this information is just education for people who for all people here in Alaska, but for here in the North Slope, you know, we've gone through maybe like a little over a month and a half now of no sunlight, and that's usually one of the main sources that we get from vitamin D. So we have been lacking in vitamin D, and what we're going to be talking about today is just education, information for people to kind of keep in mind. We're not telling you to go out there and do change your lifestyle. It's just ideas and information to give out to listeners out there to help better their health and their lifestyles if need be. So to start off, can you give us a little background on just like what vitamin D is and why it's important for our bodies?
Sure. So as you had said, vitamin D is made in your skin from sunlight, but especially in Alaska, most of the vitamin D is probably coming from diet. Mm-hmm. And so seal oil, blubber, wild-caught salmon, oily fish are all excellent sources of vitamin D. And why is it important? Because vitamin D helps you use the calcium from your diet. and it helps to build strong bones. So that's a major effect of vitamin D for the body, but also it improves muscle function. Often people in the wintertime feel more fatigued, have aches and pains in their bones and muscles, and vitamin D is critically important for muscle function and for feeling of well-being. We also are now beginning to realize that during pregnancy, vitamin D deficiency increases risk of the most serious health problem for pregnant women, which is preeclampsia. Also, women who are vitamin D deficient are more likely to require a cesarean section to give birth because vitamin D, like I said, is so important for muscle function. But also, we're now beginning to see more and more infants and children developing asthma, and there's evidence to suggest that vitamin D deficiency during pregnancy puts that child at higher risk for wheezing disorders and asthma. We also know that type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis is associated with vitamin D deficiency, especially if you're vitamin D deficient during your childhood and young adult life. For older folks, we're now beginning to realize that you have a vitamin D receptor in your brain, and vitamin D plays a critical role in helping to maintain good muscle function, improve serotonin levels in the brain, so it can actually make you feel better as well.
Wow. So vitamin D kind of goes alongside with depression and seasonal affective disorder, doesn't it?
Well, seasonal affective disorder is mainly due to lack of adequate sunlight that suppresses melatonin. And so as a result, people have melatonin levels throughout the day, and they feel like they want to hibernate,
Right.
And they're sleepy, and so that they get depressed. So bright light therapy is by far a very effective way of helping patients with seasonal affective disorder. But for some of my patients that just feel fatigued and have achiness in their bones and muscles and feel depressed, just improving their vitamin D status often can basically give them back their lives if they feel much better.
Okay, cool. You did mention that some of the traditional foods that are up here do have good sources of vitamin D, like seal oil and fatty fish and things like that. Can you tell us some other sources of vitamin D that are out there?
Sure. And so it also turns out, by the way, polar bear liver is a high content of vitamin D. But that's the problem. See, we always think that if you have a healthy diet, that you're getting all the nutrients that you need.
Right.
There's essentially no vitamin D in your diet. But like you said, the traditional foods in Alaska, Alaskans realized early on that they were having difficulties. And so by eating a slice of polar bear liver or blubber or oily fish was really a great way of being able to get their vitamin D. There's only about 100 international units of vitamin D in a glass of milk, so you can get a little bit from milk. If you expose mushrooms to sunlight, you can have them make a little bit of vitamin D. Cod liver oil is a great source of vitamin D. And that's basically it. And that's the major problem. And so sunlight is a major source. And in Alaska, you probably aren't making vitamin D in your skin at least 6 to 8 months of the year. It's probably only between about middle of May until probably the end of August that you're able to make vitamin D in your skin. So the traditional foods really have satisfied most Alaskans with their vitamin D requirement before they stopped eating traditional foods.
Right. That's why I'm glad I mentioned at the beginning that I was in Bethel. I had a lot of caribou, maybe not seal oil, but there was a lot of fish and caribou and things like that. So really traditional foods that do have some vitamin D in them. So it was really good to have. And before we continue, I just want to say that Ussie just joined us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm glad you're here with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And it's really very nice to have an opportunity because they're now beginning to appreciate that vitamin D deficiency is a major health issue, actually worldwide, but especially in Alaska because of how far north you are. And improving your vitamin D status can have a dramatic impact on reducing healthcare costs and improving, all Alaskans' health and well-being.
Perfect. If for those people who are just tuning in, this is Deshaun and Ussie, the prevention program, talking with Dr. Michael Hollick, and we're talking about vitamin D today. If you have any questions, you could call, if you're in Barrow, 852-6811, or if you're in any of the villages, you could call 1-888-852-3370. We've been talking about some of the benefits of having vitamin D in your system and good sources of vitamin D, like a lot of traditional native foods that are here in Alaska. And I was just about to ask, like you said, you were talking about a lot of the vitamin D supplements. Those are other alternatives to increase the amount of vitamin D you have in your system, right?
Exactly. In fact, we strongly recommend that everybody be taking the supplement. The Institute of Medicine recommends that during the first year of life, and all breastfeeding women should be giving their infants 400 units of vitamin D a day. Mm-hmm. For children, they should be getting 600 units of vitamin D a day. And for adults, they should be getting at least 600 to 800 units a day. But the Endocrine Society, which recommends how to prevent vitamin D deficiency, recommends that adults should be getting about 1,500 to 2,000 units a day. Wow. And if you're obese, a BMI of greater than 30, you need to take at least 2 to 3 times more because the vitamin D winds up getting diluted in the body fat. Now, you may have heard there's a very nice company that has wild-caught salmon from Alaska and a lot of other products from Alaska, including a vitamin D preparation. It's called Vital Choice. And just for your listeners to be aware is that I'm a consultant for them. But I really like that product because, like I said, it's a natural form of vitamin D.
Sorry to cut you off for a second.
The omega fatty acids that are good for heart health.
Okay. Sorry to cut you off, but I think we have a caller on the line. Hello, is there anybody there?
Yeah, hi, this is Ron. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing today, Ron?
Good. I've got a couple questions, and probably maybe I need a little clarification. Okay, he mentioned something to the effect of eating a sliver of polar bear. Okay, polar bear, is high in vitamin A. I mean, is that not dangerous to eat? And the other thing, too, is what is an acceptable amount of vitamin D, like, say, if you're taking supplements?
Right. So you're absolutely right. Vitamin A has a huge amount of polar bear liver has a huge amount of vitamin A. And so, like I said, it was just traditional that they would just take a slice of polar bear liver, but they would get their vitamin A and their vitamin D. But I'm told that when white men went up to Alaska and they started killing polar bears and they started eating polar bear liver, they wound up with severe vitamin A toxicity. And what that causes is you basically lose all your skin on your body, and so it's a very painful death. So you're right. So we don't encourage you to be going out and killing polar bears for your vitamin D, but I just thought from a perspective of traditional, practices, that was one way of doing it. In terms of your vitamin D supplement, the Endocrine Society says, and I chaired that committee, you can take up to 10,000 units of vitamin D a day and not worry about toxicity. And most of the supplements, as long as they're a national brand or a brand that you can feel comfortable with, you can feel confident that the amount of vitamin D that's there is likely to be there. And like I said, I personally take 4,000 units of vitamin D a day. All of my patients are on 3,000 units of vitamin D a day. And it's a great way to satisfy adults' vitamin D requirement. I usually recommend for children 1,000 unit supplement of vitamin D a day.
Okay. You mentioned taking a supplement. Do you take a certain amount, during the extent of the day? Do you take it all at once? I mean, you said you take 4,000, but is there a way of kind of spacing it out through the day or through your meals?
Right. So it turns out vitamin D is very forgiving, and so you can take it, 2 to 4,000 units once a day. You could take all of it once a week. So you could take 14,000 to 28,000 units once a week is perfectly fine. You could take it on an empty stomach, full stomach, with food, without food. Doesn't make any difference.
But do you space it out between like meals, or do you just have it all at once?
Doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
Because it's a fat-soluble vitamin, and the body uses it pretty quickly. So you could take it all at once. And so, for example, there's a pharmaceutical form that doctors recommend to patients. It's 50,000 units of vitamin D. And we typically give 50,000 units once a week for 8 weeks to fill up the empty vitamin D tank. And then I put my patients on 50,000 units once every 2 weeks forever. And it works very well in helping to maintain a good vitamin D status.
One last question. Okay, you want to take a supplement, and vitamin D probably would be a good source. On top of the other vitamins you're probably going to eat. Okay, now, would you try it, one, to see, do you have some sort of a reaction to it? Is it something safe that you can just try and eat? Is that okay? Or, your body's able to handle it or absorb it right away, so you ain't going to have some sort of adverse reaction, right?
So, yeah, you absorb it pretty quickly. It takes probably about 2 to 4 hours to transit the stomach into the intestine, but we showed that it begins to rise in your blood within 2 to 4 hours, and it is peaked at around 18 to 24 hours, and it goes back down to your baseline by 48 hours. So it rapidly gets into your circulation, and then it gets into your body fat, and then some of it then gets activated.
Thank you. You've been a big help. And welcome to Barrow.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have an opportunity to share this information with all of you.
Thanks, Ron. I'm so glad you called in.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome. That actually goes into one of the questions that I just had. And thank you, caller, for, I know he went off the line, but we really appreciate having callers every once in a while because we do like to reach out to people's...
If you'd like to make a call, please hang...
We like to make sure we reach out to everyone, and when they have certain concerns on our radio, that shows that people are listening and they're really interested in the topics that we have. Mm-hmm. But like I said, that kind of went to one of my other questions is how do you know if you're getting enough vitamin D in your body?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, if you're obese or if you are on medications like prednisone, for example, you may want to have your doctor measure your blood level for 25-hydroxy vitamin D. It's the major circulating form. The problem is that it's relatively expensive, and you have to go to the doctor to get it done. And so my recommendation has been, and the recommendation from the Endocrine Society, is that you should not screen people for their vitamin D status. You just make sure that they're getting enough vitamin D. So you may ask, well, what if you're drinking a quart of milk that contains vitamin D, and you're eating wild-caught salmon, and you're exposed to sunlight, in the summertime in Alaska? Are you going to worry about vitamin D toxicity? The answer is no. Like I said, you have to take literally tens of thousands of units of vitamin D a day for probably 6 months to a year before you even have to begin to worry about vitamin D toxicity. So vitamin D is very forgiving, but the problem is that you can't get enough from your diet. Traditional foods, probably in Alaska, you could. So even dried wild-caught salmon likely contained quite a bit of vitamin D for the population that consumes that type of product. But in the regular foods that you get in the supermarket, You cannot get enough vitamin D from dietary sources,
Right.
and thus a supplement is really critical.
Wow. Yeah, that's good information to give out to listeners out there. And again, if you're just tuning in, it's Deshaun and Nasi with Dr. Michael Hollick, and we're talking about vitamin D, the benefits, the importance of it, different alternatives like supplements and foods, like milk, dried salmon, seal oil, fatty fish, things like that. We just had a caller a little while ago who gave in some great questions. If you're tuning in, you could call at 852-6811 if you have questions. Or if you're in the village, you could call 1-888-852-3370.
Oh,
And so while we have this little bit of pause, your listeners, if they're interested and want to get more information about vitamin D, they can go to my website, just drhollick.com, so just drhollick.com. And also I wrote a book recently called The Vitamin D Solution that you can get on Amazon that talks about all the health benefits of vitamin D. And then if you're interested in wanting to know, can you make vitamin D in Alaska when you're exposed to sunlight, working with a group down in California, we developed an app, dminder.info, dminder.info. That's free on your Android or iPhone. And it will tell you when you're making vitamin D, and it'll also tell you when to get out of the sun so that you don't get a sunburn.
Huh, wow. How long has your app been up and running?
It's been about a year and a half, and it's quite popular. And on the new Samsung S5 phone, it's one of the apps that's automatically there.
Oh, wow. That's
Wow.
pretty cool.
Now I'm going to check my phone.
We have a lot of Samsungs here at our office, so that's a good thing to look out for.
So, can you tell me what are the signs of vitamin D deficiency and risk factors?
Yeah, that is certainly a good question, and that's part of the problem. Is that vitamin D deficiency is very insidious, and like I said, increases risk for preeclampsia in pregnant women, increases risk of them requiring a cesarean section, increases risk for asthma and wheezing disorders, increases risk for TB infection and infectious diseases like influenza. But also, like I said, if you're vitamin D deficient, often patients have achiness in their bones and muscles, or kids with growing pains can sometimes be associated with vitamin D deficiency. So it's very subtle, but I can tell you that when you then take vitamin D and all of these non-specific symptoms disappear, you begin to realize, oh my heavens, this is such a simple fix. All I need to do is make sure I take my vitamin D. In terms of other consequences, like I said, it increases risk of these many chronic serious illnesses. I'll give you just a couple of examples. From the National Health Survey in the United States, they reported that about 50% of children ages 1 to 5 are vitamin D deficient or insufficient, and children 5 to 7 years of age, 70% are deficient or insufficient. They are at higher risk of having high blood pressure, higher blood sugar, and pre-type 2 diabetes. For adults, it increases their risk for heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, and deadly cancers of the breast and colon, just to name a few.
Wow, that's...
Yeah, because at our WIC department here in Barrow, they check for iron deficiencies for young adults and for children as well. So that kind of goes in line too with vitamin D, doesn't it?
A lot of babies too, including my children, were all born with jaundice. And the first thing they would do is put him on a vitamin D regimen until he got his color back. I probably should have kept him on the vitamin D. Now I feel bad.
Yeah, we've also had some cases, and I have two right now in Alaska, where infants have been brought in by their parents because they had like a swelling in the leg, and they found that they had a bone fracture, and it's likely that the infants had infantile rickets, and increases bone fragility, so they can have bone fractures sometimes without the parents even knowing, just by normal handling.
Wow.
Oh, wow. No, I had a friend that had no idea her child had a fracture at all, and until it was healed, and they did an X-ray for another thing, and they said it probably happened at birth, and her child had jaundice too. Yeah.
Yep, and what's really very concerning to me, and it's ongoing now in Alaska, I have two cases, is that unfortunately doctors aren't appreciating that vitamin D deficiency in infancy can increase risk for fracture. So these parents sometimes are arrested as felons for child abuse, and the children are taken away from the parents. So it can be a very serious problem.
Oh.
That's interesting.
Do you think you could tell us a little more about since you talked about a little bit more of what you do at your clinic? Like what services you
Sure. So I do both basic and clinical research. And so right now we have a study underway where we're looking at the possibility of using yeast. Yeast, it turns out, which is just like mushroom, if you expose yeast to ultraviolet light, they make vitamin D. And of course, yeast can be used to raise bread. And so wouldn't it be neat if you could irradiate yeast with ultraviolet light? So you go to your local supermarket and buy yeast, and when you're making your bread, it would actually impart vitamin D in the bread. And so then the question that we're now asking is the vitamin D in the yeast, in the bread, as available to your body as it would be from other sources? Right now, we think that it is, but we have to complete the study to be sure of that.
Mm-hmm. Homemade bread is a big...
It's
a big thing
right.
in Barra.
And that's true, because vitamin D3, of course, you can get from wild-caught salmon, and like I said, the Vital Choice supplement uses that source of vitamin D, but it also comes from lanolin. And so they collect cholesterol from lanolin, and then they do chemistry on it to make vitamin D3. And so vegans, of course, are not interested in taking vitamin D3 because it's coming from an animal source. And so mushrooms exposed to ultraviolet light or yeast exposed to ultraviolet light is a good source because it's vitamin D2 and it's not an animal source.
Mm-hmm. Lanolin. Can you tell me what lanolin is?
I don't know, I was about to say
Sure, I'm sorry. Lanolin is the oil that's on sheep's wool.
Oh.
Okay, we don't have much sheep up here, so.
Well,
I'm
no,
sure you
but
don't. But lanolin is, it's a very nice kind of oil that's used for cosmetic products, especially for women, for skin products.
Yeah, I was gonna say lanolin is also used to help breastfeeding mothers.
Yes, absolutely right.
Yeah, because it's safe. It's safe for the baby to ingest.
No, because the vitamin D is not in the lanolin. It's the cholesterol from the lanolin is extracted, and then it's chemically modified. So you get no vitamin D from lanolin. It's just that's where they get the major component that they can do the chemistry on to make the vitamin D3.
Right. Okay.
Um, I know we talked about this before, but can you go back and tell us a little more on some of the sources for vitamin D for people who are just tuning in? Because I know, isn't like egg yolks and things like that also sources of vitamin D?
Well, the reason I never mentioned that is there's like about 20 units in egg yolk, and we recommend that you have 2,000 units a day. So you'd have to eat 100 egg yolks a day. Trust me, by a week, you'd probably be dead from the cholesterol that you ingested. So egg yolk is really not a very good source of vitamin D.
Right.
It's mainly oily fish, and there's about 500 to 1,000 units in 3.5 ounces of wild-caught salmon. And like I said, adults, all of you in Barrow, adults should be on at least 2,000 units of vitamin D a day. And children, 1,000 units of vitamin D a day. And you can't get that from your diet. It's unfortunately that simple. And that's why most of the world's population, I mean, you might find it amazing because you would think, well, I'm in Alaska, that's why I'm vitamin D deficient. But about 50% of the population in India is vitamin D deficient.
Oh, wow.
90% of the population in Saudi Arabia are vitamin D deficient. It's a major health problem globally. I recently came back from Brazil. More than 50% of children in Brazil were found to be vitamin D deficient.
And they have like more sunlight.
Yeah.
than
Right, but
most
everybody avoids the sun, right? And if you put a sunscreen on
Right.
with a sun protection factor, say, of 30, it reduces your ability to make vitamin D in your skin by more than 95%.
Wow.
Maybe we already hit the spot. Maybe we didn't. But I know we've been talking through it through the show. But what are the health benefits of taking your at least 2,000 units of vitamin D a day?
Sure. So for children, it helps to maximize accrual of calcium into their bones so they have stronger bones. There was a nice study in Lebanon where they showed that young girls who took vitamin D had better muscle function. So often, even in children, they have better bone health, they have better muscle function, and they may be more alert, less likely to have growing pains. Adults, they feel better. I'm constantly told by my patients that they just feel better if they're on vitamin D. And like I said, it makes sure that you have healthy bones. So it helps prevent osteoporosis later in life. It helps you use the calcium that's in your diet. And also markedly reduces risk of upper respiratory tract infections, deadly cancers, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune diseases, and even depression and neurocognitive dysfunction.
Right. This is all very interesting. It's fun to take in too. But I'm wondering what's the history? I mean, how did we come to find out we are low on vitamin D? How do we know, what does history tell us, or what does science tell us that, I mean, how did we get here? How did we know? How do you know? Sure.
So I think that the explanation is pretty clear. That is, a study was done in Maasai herdsmen, that live outdoors, exposed to sunlight all the time in Africa at the equator. Their blood level of 25-hydroxy vitamin D, that major circulating form, is at around 50. And if you take 2,000 to 3,000 units of vitamin D a day, your blood level will be around 50. Right now, if you're not taking a supplement and not eating traditional foods like wild-caught salmon, for example, your blood level is probably no more than 15 to 18. And so, as a result, you're vitamin D deficient. With the concern about skin cancer and sun exposure, and recommending that children and adults should never be exposed to direct sunlight, and they should always be putting on a sunscreen, has caused a major epidemic of vitamin D deficiency worldwide. It was something that wasn't appreciated. So this problem really came about over the past 30 to 40 years because we live indoors. We're playing on the computers all the time. We're not outside exposed to natural sunlight. And when we are exposed to natural sunlight, we're now told, always wear sun protection. It is the major source of vitamin D for most people in the world.
Mm-hmm. What, and sunscreen? What, I mean, I know we all need that sunscreen. I don't use sunscreen either. But does that, so the sunblock blocks the sun from your skin to create vitamin D?
Exactly, because the sunlight that causes sunburning is the same sunlight that makes vitamin D.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I recommend is that you always protect your face from the sun. So putting sun protection on your face is great. I have no problem with that, on the top of your hands, because that's where most of the sun damage can occur. But the rest of your body, your arms and legs, abdomen and back, where you're out there swimming, you can be exposed to some sunlight. And like I said, use the app, dminder.info, and it will help advise you how much vitamin D you're making. And it will tell you when to get out of the sun so you don't damage your skin. Mm-hmm. And just for you to realize that you only make vitamin D from about 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. So even though the sun may be shining 24 hours a day in Alaska in the summertime, you basically still only make vitamin D during the period of time when everybody's working indoors.
Right.
And being out in the early morning, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, or after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, exposed to sunlight, you will not make any vitamin D in your skin.
Huh. Is there a reason for that, or?
Well, the reason is that that very tiny amounts of ultraviolet B radiation, that's the ultraviolet light that makes vitamin D, the reason very little gets ever to your Earth is because the ozone efficiently absorbs it.
Okay.
So if you think about the sun being directly above you, then the sun's rays only have to go through a little bit of ozone, and you make vitamin D. But if in the early morning and late afternoon, as the sun is coming in at a more oblique angle, it has to go through more ozone. So it's more efficiently absorbed and never gets to planet Earth's surface.
Okay.
Right. If you're just tuning in to the Health Department Radio Show, we are here with Dr. Michael Hall and myself and Deshawn, and we're talking about vitamin D deficiency and benefits, risk factors. If you have any questions for Dr. Michael Hollick, call us at KBRW 852-6811, or if you're in the villages, 1-888-852-3370. If you have any questions, just call in. We've talked about the importance of having your native foods. I know one of my favorite teachers used to tell me all the time to always eat my muck duck. I'm like, you don't have to tell me twice. And it's mind-blowing how deficient I am in vitamin D sitting here right now.
I know, I was thinking maybe we should.
Basically, yeah, everybody is. I mean, it's really, quite remarkable, and it's a simple fix. Like I said, eating, more traditional foods or wild-caught salmon and taking the supplement, I think, is critical. It's very inexpensive, and you can get it at your local pharmacy. And, for about $5 or $8, and you can get 2,000 unit tablets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us again some of the signs to kind of look out for, like if we are like vitamin D deficient?
Right. So like I said, it's very subtle, and it's mainly people, they just feel a little bit more tired or a little bit more depressed, or they have achiness in their bones and muscles, or they're complaining of stiffness in their joints, especially in the summertime when there's no sun outside. These are some of the classic clinical signs for vitamin D deficiency.
Okay. Yeah, and that kind of stuff happens a lot up here. I mean, during the times when we don't have much sunlight, or it's more of the winter months, we get a little more fatigued and things like that. We have another caller on the line. Hello, caller?
Hello. This is Wilson, and it's your food product at the store.
I was thinking about that, about what we can find at the store, at the AC store, that would help. But I think there really isn't, unless you buy the supplement at the store. They do have some things you can get, but more. The majority of the food, the majority.
Can you get it with a food stamp?
Some yes. Do you know anything about what foods we can buy at the store, Dr. Michael Hollick?
Yeah, but I think, like I said,
I think with
oily fish would be your best source of vitamin D. Milk is fortified with a little bit of vitamin D. Some orange juices like Tropicana and Minute Maid, you'll see on the label, contains calcium and vitamin D. So those are some of the foods that you can get some vitamin D, but you still can't satisfy that requirement unless you take the supplement.
And if I take D1, is that MSD?
say
The
that
vitamin D1.
The D1 vitamin?
Yeah.
well, if you look at the label on the D1, like Dr. Hollick said, 2,000 units at least a day. So if you can able to look at the D1 label,
It'll tell you how many units of vitamin D are in the capsule, and depending on that value, you can determine how much vitamin D you get.
About B1.
B1 or D1? I'm guessing D1. Like I said, it would show on the label, and I feel like at AC there might be a little section that has vitamin tablets like that. But if anything else, if not here in Barrow, then I've seen it a lot in Anchorage and at Walmart and places like that that'll have a good section of vitamins, and they do have I think like maybe vitamin D1 tablets that have like 1,000 units of vitamin D in it, but I'm not entirely sure on the amount they would have at AC.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for calling.
thank you for calling. Yay. So yeah, I like that, the list you gave us, for people who are on food stamps. I'm gonna look in to see if we can buy vitamins with food stamps. That's a really good question. I think I'm gonna look into that. But if you're on food stamps and you have to go to AC,
You'd
that was
pro-
actually a really good list.
In order to buy vitamins, you probably have to talk to the cashiers and see what, either the cashiers or the manager, to see exactly what is available for food stamps. But like Dr. Hollick said, the fish, milk, fortified milk, and orange juice. There's a lot of things that have labels that say, oh, there's an amount of vitamin D on it. Or they'll just say vitamin D, and you can look at the nutrition label to see how much vitamin D you will be getting from that source. So for those of you who are looking for different alternatives or want to increase the amount of vitamin D that you have in your system or that you get throughout the day or the week, make sure to look at your nutrition label, and you can better gauge how much vitamin D you're taking into your body.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Dr. Hollick, for coming on our show. I really appreciate that. The information you've shared has been amazing.
I'm happy to have this opportunity. I think that it could hopefully improve the health and welfare of children and adults throughout Alaska. It's a really important message, and such a simple fix is just to be able to, like I said, eat wild caught salmon or oily fish, and take a supplement and get some foods that contain vitamin D, like you said, orange juice that's fortified with vitamin D, or milk fortified with vitamin D. Some cereals are even fortified with vitamin D. It's all, really a great way to improve your overall health and welfare for you and your entire family. And for those that weren't on early, is you can go to my website, drhollick.com, just drhollick.com. There's lots of information about vitamin D and our stream presentations by me. And you can also use the app BMINDER.info in the summertime. You can actually see when you can make vitamin D in Barrow, Alaska, when the sun is shining.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to reach out to people. Apps and websites, because everybody's on the web or on their phones or on a tablet or something like that. So
on the web, on their phone.
So it's a good way to reach out to people and get information that's important like this, so people can be more aware of their health. Do you have any other resources that are available for people if they're more interested about vitamin D?
I think that, like I said, the website is probably the best source, but the app also, when you get into it, has a lot of information about vitamin D, and I'm in the process of putting a blog on the app website, and so that may be another option for people where they can actually ask questions, and I'll be responding so that you can get a better insight to what your particular issue is and how you may be able to deal with it.
Right. Cool. And you did say that you had a book that was out, vitamins.
Sure, it's called The Vitamin D Solution.
Awesome. And if people are interested in that, they could get that off of Amazon, right?
Correct.
Cool.
And sometimes many of the local libraries carry it as well.
Oh, wow. We might end up having that here in our own library. So if people are interested in the book, they could go to the library and ask if they have the vitamin D solution and give it a quick read. So once again, thank you again, Dr. Hollick. We're going to wrap things up. If you don't have any other tips or advice or any knowledge to give out to our listeners out there.
Well, the only other piece of information that I think it's worthwhile for your listeners to be aware of is don't forget about your calcium intake. For children, sure, they need at least 800 to 1,000 units a day, milligrams a day from dietary sources, depending upon their age. The recommendation from the Institute of Medicine for teenagers is 1,300 milligrams a day to maximize your bone health. For adults up to the age of 50 is 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day. And for adults over the age of 50, 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day. There's about 300 milligrams in 8 ounces of skim milk. So it's a great way to improve your calcium status. There's also 300 milligrams of calcium in calcium-fortified orange juice, another simple way to switch out your regular orange juice with calcium-fortified orange juice. that would increase your calcium intake for both you and your children, because calcium is very, very important for your overall health and welfare, as well as for good bone health.
Right. So women too, especially, need to be taking in a lot of calcium too. I had done
No
some
question.
research about the connection between low calcium or calcium deficiency and hormone levels, and they're actually very related and intertwined and connected. But anyways, we got to start wrapping things
Absolutely.
up.
Yep, and also, especially for pregnant women and women that are breastfeeding, they definitely need a good source of both calcium and vitamin D. And you may be aware that there's essentially no vitamin D in human breast milk. So if you give your infant human breast milk as the sole source of nutrition, the infant will be vitamin D deficient for that period of time. And that's why even the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that all breastfeeding women should be giving their infants 400 units of vitamin D a day.
Right.
That's a good fact to keep in mind as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, thank you, Dr. Hollick, for joining us on our radio show. We really appreciate the information you've been giving out to us and the listeners out there, so really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and I hope you all have a delightful day.
All right, thank you. Same to you.
You have a good day. Deshaun, you got some announcements for us, or what?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I've been a little sick this whole week.
I think everybody is.
Back and forth between weather. But there's a bunch of fun stuff happening this weekend. Today, they'll be starting village tournaments here in Barrow. There's boys and girls teams coming from Point Lay, Wainwright, Uckasook, and even the Hobson Middle School. And we'll have our Barrow JV boys and girls playing in this tournament. Today they'll be playing at 5:30 at the Barrow High School. The girls' high school JV team will be playing against Hobson Middle School at 5:30. 7 o'clock, girls JV will be playing Point Lay, and at 8:30, girls, our Whaler girls varsity team will be playing Wainwright at Barrow High School, and at Pragovic, the boys will be playing. The JV boys will be playing Wainwright at 5:30. At 7, the boys JV will be playing middle school, and at 8:30, boys, the Uckasook team will be playing Point Lay. So there'll be games going on at the high school and the middle school, or the high school and Pragovic. So be on the lookout. The tournament will be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I'll leave the schedule here at KBRW so they could probably announce it. There you go, Isaac. So I'll leave the schedule. They'll announce it. And there'll be a family fun day this Saturday, the 16th, from noon to 4. So before all the games start happening, or if you feel like taking a break from the games, there's also going to be a lot of fun happening at Apolloc. There'll be door prizes, games, and childcare will be there. Medical tea tasting, or medicinal tea tasting will be happening. There'll be yoga, Zumba, massages, watercolor painting, so a lot of fun
Food
stuff.
demos.
Oh yeah, food
That's
demos,
important.
snacks. Yeah, there'll be snacks and door prizes, so a lot of fun for family, kids, people of all ages. So their motto is "Let's make 2016 the best year ever," and it'll be sponsored by the Samuel Simmons Memorial Hospital Diabetes Prevention Program. And if you want more information, you can contact Laura Thomas at 852-3755 for more information. And today, the college is doing a career fair at the high school. So if anyone's interested, they started at like 9:15 today. They did some higher education. Just giving out more information on higher education. They're talking about legal services, how people can get into a legal career if they want, sciences, education, we'll be doing a little spot on health careers, vocational careers, and vacation. And tomorrow they'll also be doing a little spot on what they have at the college. They'll be doing a tour of all the different Ilisagavik programs. So for those parents out there who are listening, get your kids involved because there'll be a lot of fun stuff going on. And if they're not sure what they're going to do if they are in high school, they can maybe find something that they want to do at the career fair. And that's one of the things that prevention kind of strives for, is having certain goals set and reaching more opportunities for people out there. So career fair is a must.
Right. And there is a breastfeeding coalition meeting that's going to be on Friday at 9 a.m. at Samuel Simmons Memorial Hospital. There will be some snacks, I think, and a special visitor that day. So they'll, and they have some really fun things going on. If anyone wants to be a part of Breastfeeding Coalition, anyone, any mother, son, child, father, uncle, aunt.
Yeah, men could go too. I've gone to the Breastfeeding Coalition meetings.
But you're not the only man over there either.
True.
Yeah, in the Breastfeeding Coalition. So go Friday at 9 a.m. It's a lot of interesting information. Also, the Noso Bora Health Board will hold a public meeting on January 21st, 2016, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., and then 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. As a video teleconference. The public is welcome to participate. Village and Barra residents can participate through the teleconference at their village teleconference center. You may contact Jennifer Dunbar and Brittany Tolston at the NSB Health Department and Social Services at 852-0366 for additional information. No, go ahead.
Make sure your pet's rabies vaccinations are up to date. We did have, before the holidays, we had talked about rabies with our vet clinic staff, and get out some good information. So if your pets still need their vaccinations, you could go to the vet clinic, get them spayed or neutered too as well. And it's all free, so you can call the vet clinic at 852-0277 for appointments. If you're worried about a friend, if you're worried about yourself, you could talk to someone or call the Alaska Care Line, because with help comes hope. That's the Alaska's suicide hotline, basically. So if people are depressed or have suicidal thoughts, they can get help, because there is hope. You could call the number that's 1-877-266-4357, or you could text the number 4 and then help to 839863. Do you want to do the background?
Yeah, because you sound vitamin D deficient over there.
Sick. I need to get a vitamin.
Tobacco is the leading cause of preventable death in Alaska, causing nearly 600 deaths each year. For more information on quitting tobacco, call the Alaska Quit Line at 1-800-QUIT-NOW, or call us over at the Prevention Crew, 855-8501 for more information. We don't have a coalition meeting set up yet, but we will very soon, because we do need to meet. We have some very fun information coming up.
Yeah, and if you're a concerned member in Barrow who wants to help us limit alcohol abuse, because that is one of the, that was the top priority that our coalition ended up coming up with, and members of the community actually, from the data we collected from the community, we've arrived at alcohol as being one of our top priorities to focus on, and
data-driven.
Yeah, all the data that we've been collecting is kind of coming to an end, and we're going more into more of the positive
planning
and building strategies to help limit the alcohol abuse that is happening in our community. So if you are a concerned member of the community that wants to participate, please give us a call, 855-8501.
And we will be in Arkasuk
Monday.
next week.
Yeah.
So we'll be there Monday and Tuesday. If you want to come and see us, if you're in Arkasuk, come and see us. We'll be spending the majority of our time at the school.
Yeah, it'll be anti-bullying day, so we have this whole day full of activities for the youth and parents. So parents, if you're listening, bring your kids and we'll have a lot of fun. Thanks, KBR.